If you're looking at putting solar panels on your roof, the subject of re-roofing before you put panels on may come up. In fact, I hope it does because it's not a small expense. The salesperson or the company you're talking to may or may not bring this up, but it can be quite expensive if not done right and considered when you're doing the solar project. Now, there's a lot to go into this individual topic, but we'll cover kind of two areas. And one is considering whether you re-roof before the initial solar panel system goes on in the first place, and then the hidden potential expense of what happens when you need to re-roof when the solar panel system is installed, perhaps years later. So we'll get into both. And I've had a lot of these conversations myself. I used to be a solar sales consultant here in Denver, Colorado, and then I've done a couple net zero renovations myself, which had solar on them. One of them I had to re-roof before the solar went on. The other had a roof already installed, so that was a consideration there. And now I help people design their own solar systems where we talk about this stuff as well. And I wanted to make this video because even though I love solar and sustainability and everything, if you don't design things from the beginning, or if you're not aware of these expenses coming up down the line, meaning over the life of the whole solar panel system, which can be 30 to 40 years, these are surprise expenses that can leave a bad taste in your mouth, among other things. And it can get really expensive, of course, to re-roof and also remove and reinstall solar panels. So I just want to present the information so that you have everything you need in making these kind of decisions. So in this video, I'll cover the pros and cons of re-roofing before you install solar panels or waiting. Also the longevity of different roof types and what you might want to do there. I'll share my own experiences on the net zero homes that I did with solar and re-roofing, and then kind of go through my final thoughts on what you could do to dig into this a little further, but also just help you make the right decisions. So let's get into it. My name is Aaron Shine, where we combine affordable real estate with practical sustainability to build your wealth and well-being. So when you're first looking at solar, hopefully it comes up during the conversation with the solar company, but you'll have to look at your roof age and to see if it makes sense to re-roof before you put new solar panels on. Now, there are different roof types. I've got a chart here actually that shows kind of the average longevity of different roof types. Probably the most common type is the regular shingle roof, and that'll last anywhere from maybe 12, 15 years to 20, 25 years. It totally depends on your location and the climate and quality of the shingles and everything else, all the other variables. But you'll have to get a good idea of what your current roof, what the average lifespan is in your area specifically, and then figure out when it was installed if you don't know when you did that yourself. Now, you can do that by going on the property appraiser website typically. Hopefully the installer originally had pulled a roof permit, so you can go check out when that exactly was installed to get a good idea of how much lifespan you have left on your existing roof. Now, once you have a good idea of what your existing roof might last in terms of years into the future, we can now look at the solar panel system itself. Kind of the standard warranty itself on solar panels is 25 years right now. And then we know panels go back to the 80s and 90s. We know that solar panels, even though they'll produce less power, it kind of drops off over time, but they'll be up there still producing 40, 50 years later, potentially. So we have to, in theory, think about our roof install situation and re-roofing options into that far into the future, if you also plan on being in the home for that long. Kind of the second part of this equation is what happens in the future when you need to re-roof your regular roof and you have solar panels up there. I think it's much less talked about in the initial conversations with solar companies and homeowners, but here's the reality. It is a lot of work to remove the solar panel system and the racking and all the electronics up there to make room for re-roofing the system. You can't just re-roof and leave a solar panel system up there. Of course, every house is different, but that's typically what happens. And kind of as a standard to know going forward, the reality is this is expensive. Companies, at least from what I've seen in different quotes, charge anywhere from $200 to $400 or more per panel of your system to remove it and then to reinstall it after the new roof is put on. So this can be a surprise expense, especially if you have 20 panels. The two houses I did are 20 panels in one and 24 panels in the other. So right there, you're looking at $4,000 to $5,000 on the low end. So to go back to the first point of whether you install a new roof before solar to begin with, we can factor in these considerations. And to help with this, I actually built a calculator on the website. If you go to attainablehome.com and click savings calculators up top, I've got a solar re-roof cost calculator, and I'll show screenshots of this up here right now, but you can plug in your specific system information, including roof longevity of what you have up there right now, what you might install. It factors in the lifespan of the solar system, and you can see a good idea of not only what you might spend over time, but how many times you're going to need to re-roof while the solar panels make power up there and can be installed up there. So you might be surprised at the numbers. Give it a shot. I've also included the link below in the description. And as a side note, whoever does do the panel takeoff and reinstall, such as a roofer or a solar company, maybe be prepared for even a bit more expense, because you could have wires break, you could have panels fall off the roof and break. You know, there might be some surprises on the install. There's rodent nests up there. There's some cleanup. The sun is really harsh on components, so maybe you need to replace some electronics, and just some other things to be aware of. And I just mentioned this because this all kind of goes into the original thought of, do you re-roof before solar goes up there to start with, even to the point where, for instance, maybe you were looking at a shingle roof, but maybe now it's metal. If you are going to stay in the home for a long time and your solar panels are known to be up there for 30, 40, 50 years even, maybe go with a metal roof that lasts 50 years so you never have to worry about this again, ideally. You know, some different thoughts will come up like that with this equation. And you might also be thinking that you'll do this yourself to save thousands of dollars. That's a valid thought. I'm a big DIYer for the same reasons in some projects, but just so you know, of course, you'll be up on the roof. Not everything is a monetary saving, so you may be saving thousands of dollars, but are you willing to risk falling off the roof? Are you willing to risk breaking your legs, or worse? I'm not trying to be worst case scenario here, but you'll need a lot of help. I mean, you'll need maybe at least one more person. A lot of the newer panels are roughly 6x4 in dimensions. They're really big, they're heavy, they're bulky, and especially if you're on a second story or third story roof or something, it can be quite dangerous. Can you afford to be out of work? Can you afford to have some other surprises come up where you're out of commission? Or can you spend a day or two doing this project yourself, where that's the opportunity cost of doing something else with your time? So these are all considerations, and I wanted to just mention that part. And actually, when I used to sell solar, we would hear stories about people going up on their own roofs, like when it snowed and there was snow cover on the panels and things. But either way, they were up on the roof and they would start brushing off the panels for 50 cents worth of power per day, and they fall off and break their leg or something like that. So again, I've seen stories where homeowners think they can go up there and it's going to be an easy project to save money, but you never know what might happen. And I just want to make sure that you make the right decision, which isn't always just about money. So I can't think of absolutely everything, but I hope that puts something into perspective. I've also made a chart on what it would cost if you hired it out. And in some cases, if you have a shingle roof over the life of the solar panel system, this may happen 2, 3, or 4 times if you're in the home for that long. And this is what it would cost. So you can see here in the chart, I've got the number of solar panels you might have up on the roof up top, and then the different levels of price per panel to remove them and then reinstall them in between the re-roofing project. And you can see it adds up quite a bit. So again, factor this in when you look at possibly re-roofing with a longer lifespan roof to begin with, before you do the solar panels at all. And as I mentioned, I recently went through this in the last few years on 2 net zero home renovations of my own in Florida. The first one was really great because it has a south-facing roof, but the previous owner had put a new roof on 6 months prior and had done hurricane straps which tied the roof to the walls. You get insurance discounts for that, and there were high wind shingles put on, which was a little bit of an upgrade, and that means that the roof should last a little bit longer. So in that scenario, when I bought the house, that was a consideration because I knew I'd be putting solar on. And given that the new roof was already done and installed, this was great because I could just move ahead with the solar panels. And I've got many other videos on the channel about that project specifically. You can check it out for that. But fast forward to now, about a year and a half ago, it got hit by Hurricane Ian, and the roof was mostly intact. I had to repair a little patch, but the solar panel system was great and the new roof was great. So all in all, that was phenomenal, especially through 160-mile-an-hour winds for hours at a time. And after that renovation, I bought another house in the Tampa Bay area to do another net zero home renovation, and solar was going to go on that. This was a different scenario. It was a 50s brick home with an old roof. Actually, the permits showed that it was installed in 2005, and the insurance company wouldn't even insure the house until a new roof went on. So the old roof, which had some patchwork to do before even closing on the house, was used as a bargaining chip, and actually perfect because I knew I needed a new roof anyway. So I put a new roof on, installed literally about 2 weeks before the solar panel system went on. So it made all the sense in the world just to do a new roof and then put on the solar panel system. So I have maybe a good 15 years at least before I have to worry about this again. So I wanted to leave you with some final thoughts. Again, there's so much to talk about with this subject. If you've got your own experience with this, feel free to put your story in the comments below. It actually really helps others see what it's like to go through this process, either good or bad, with solar panels. Because again, we don't want thousands of dollars of surprises when a lot of the solar industry, unfortunately, has a bad reputation already. And you want to be able to budget for this stuff. So for my first thought that I wrote down, again, just have a good idea of how long you're going to stay in the home. Even if you don't do it, we're talking of literally tens of thousands of dollars here over the next 10, 20 years or so. The average person stays in their existing home for 7 years. With interest rates currently higher, or mortgage rates, I should say, that more people are staying in their homes for longer and they don't want to give up their 3 to 4% mortgage. So that could also factor into how long you stay in the home. The second thought revolves around us real estate investors. I have rental properties myself, and it's a bit of a different mindset than your primary residence. But I know that in the mindset of an investor, if you treat it like a business, you just want the lowest expenses possible, which means reshingling a roof and calling it a day for the lowest price you can find. But if you have solar up there, especially if you pay the electric bill yourself in a short-term rental, furnished rental, or maybe other situations, possibly multifamily, you might be paying the electric bill. So in essence, this ROI and payback falls into the bucket of your responsibility with combining solar and the re-roof. And there are a lot of benefits to actually having solar, renewables, and efficiency on rental properties. I'll be doing those videos in the future. And while you're researching this process, be sure to check out the combo systems like the Tesla Solar Roof or the GAF solar shingle roof. There are a lot of great videos on YouTube about this, but that combines the roofing and solar into one. And so they usually cost more, but you're not paying for both separately. They might look better. There are a lot of pros and cons to those systems, so be sure to research that a little bit, especially if you're looking at re-roofing and going solar before you do either one. And as a final thought, after going through a lot of this myself and having many of these conversations, I would say practically, if your roof only has about 3 to 5 years left on it, I think it makes sense just to re-roof before you go solar. Again, take a look at the longer lasting roofs, like maybe metal, tile, slate, or some other materials that would last a longer time, maybe in the same lifespan of a solar system, 30, 40, 50 years, so that you don't have to mess with this down the line. Now, it's a whole different scenario if you're not planning on staying in the home for long. Of course, you're just kicking the can down the road for the next buyer, but that's really a personal decision and goes into the other motivations of doing solar in the first place if you're not going to be in there for too long. So I hope this video helped. There's a lot to consider. Again, add your own experiences in the comments below if you have them. It'd be cool to see your stories. As always, I appreciate your time and thanks for watching.